I just had to learn to continuously practice active gratitude. And now I meditate on gratitude, and it's just extremely important. Integrity as well. I've been in sales all of my life, and I've sold things that, it was like, whatever. And sometimes I didn't feel like companies were being integral.
Thomas Edison, Richard Branson, John F. Kennedy, Mozart, Michael Jordan, Will Smith. That sounds like a list of highly successful titans in a variety of vocations. Why is it that we rarely hear that they have or had ADHD? And you know what we hear even less about? Serena Williams, Emma Watson, Mel Robbins, Whoopi Goldberg, Agatha Christie, Erin Brockovich, Cher. Yeah, the successful women navigating ADHD. And that's exactly why I started this podcast, ADHD for Smartass Women. I'm your host, Tracy Otsuka. I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, a lifelong student, now a coach. I'm also the creator of Your ADHD Brain is A-OK, a system that helps people like you figure out what they should do with their life. And we're here today to talk ADHD, your strengths, your symptoms, your workarounds, and how you proudly stand out instead of trying to fit in. I credit my ADHD for some of my greatest gifts. And you know what? I spy a happier life for you too. So without further ado, a shiny new episode is starting now. Hello, I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for episode number 222 of ADHD for Smartass Women. I hope that you'll subscribe to this podcast and our newsletter over at tracyotsuka.com. My purpose is always to show you who you are and then, of course, inspire you to be it. And in the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met a one that wasn't truly brilliant at something. Not one. And so, of course, I am just delighted to introduce you to Jen Kohms. Jen is a 54-year-old adopted woman who grew up labeled with all of the nasty adjectives that are sometimes associated with ADHD. While growing up, her adoptive mom got sick when she was 13 and refused medical care. Her dad really struggled with coping. He'd come home from work every day, would drink, and then pass out in another room. Jen's mom passed away when she was 15. Her dad moved to Florida, and Jen has scraped by since then on her own, getting married, divorced, and all the while raising 3 kids. She's another example of the mommy factor in ADHD women, right? She was diagnosed at 34 after her son was diagnosed with ADHD. But Jen took medication, but didn't do much more. Recently, however, she became hyperfixated on learning about her ADHD and wrote me in an email. And this is what she said. Tracy, thank you. I listen to ADHD for Smartass Women daily. I only discovered you this year when I wanted to learn more about my ADHD and came up with the bright idea to search for ADHD podcasts on a long road trip. I listened to a bunch of episodes of other podcasts, and not one of them flipped my switches as yours did. Well, thanks, Jen. Thanks for the gold stars. You've reinforced that for me, this is a superpower. I see the pre-diagnoses workarounds I figured out on my own that helped me to survive while raising myself from the age of 13, really. I now understand that this affected far more about me than I'd thought, and I see how many women were not diagnosed and labeled stupid and lazy, and how this affected our self-esteem. I now understand that medication is not the only thing that helps me to be my best self, why exercise makes me invincible, and why I'm always the hardest worker at any job that allows me the freedom to create a process. My dyscalculia made school almost impossible. I, however, found success through my innate ability to listen around corners and through walls, to read people and their needs and care enough to help. You gave me the motivation to continue to bug the crap out of my boss until I landed my dream job where I am part of literally saving dogs' lives and restoring the lost human canine bond. I finally had the opportunity to display the gift of extreme empathy given to me by my ADHD. It didn't start out as something I even wanted to do, and I knew it. But you gave me, I think you were saying the lady balls to shove my foot, and vaginas are much stronger, right? We birth babies.
Yeah.
Anyway, to shove my foot firmly in the door, and I made it something they needed. I've done this with many jobs. I like to say, I don't climb ladders, but create my own rungs. This job feeds my passion like no other, and you are part of getting me there. Tracy, you're the advocate and voice that was missing all my life. And then you say a bunch of other nice things. Jen, welcome. Did I get all of that right?
You most certainly did. Things have changed, but I have to say that I am completely blown away that you invited me on the show, and I'm so thankful and grateful to be talking to you. I can't believe I'm talking to you.
Please, 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 please. I just loved so many of the things that you said. And I thought that those things would really resonate with a lot of our listeners. And I want to go through, I highlighted a bunch of things in that email that I wanted to ask you about. But before we go there, can we do the usual? And can we talk about your ADHD diagnoses first?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I was actually, you know, I struggled growing up and everything. Like, if we could go back on that a little bit,
Yeah, let's
that'd be
start
great.
with what was going on during your childhood, because clearly there was a lot going on and there must have also been a lot of trauma.
Yeah, I believe there's probably trauma.
Yes.
But the thing is, growing up and everything like that, I struggled. I struggled in school, etc. And, the diagnosis came when I was 34 years old, and my son had brought home this thing, and he says, you need to check off this thing, take this survey for me.
Jen,
The teacher gave it to me.
Jen,
And yes.
let's back up and let's start with early childhood, okay?
Okay.
So, just because I want everybody to get the full picture here. So, when you were, let's say, in grade school, were you struggling in school then?
I struggled in school from the very beginning. Absolutely. I always struggled in school. I was, I guess, the daydreamer. You know, I was the talker in class. I was the one who was talking to the kid next to me. I was always looking to help people with their own stuff. So I wasn't staying in my own lane. So people say, yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, my best friend that I mentioned I believe I mentioned it in the bio, she struggled with, what is it? She was like just socially, she was a social phobe. So
So,
I would
she had
actually,
social anxiety?
she had social anxiety, and I saw she was just so nervous. So I would talk to her and make her laugh, which was disruptive. So I always thought that I only had ADHD, but looking back, now I know that I have the combined type. I have both
Okay,
because,
wait a minute. So you thought that maybe you were only into inattentive, but you think you're combined type, so you have some hyperactivity and some inattention?
yes, yes. And
Okay.
like you, the drive is part of that,
Yeah, of the hyperactivity.
Yeah, yeah, I realized that. Workaholic.
Okay, so you were a young child, you're struggling in school. What were your parents like during this? Were they really supportive, or were they causing some anxiety as well as the school system?
Yeah, that was hard. That was hard. And I understand their struggle and everything, but especially math because of the dyscalculia.
Uh-huh.
I can never pronounce that.
Well, apparently, Jen, there are several ways to pronounce it. There's two ways, excuse me. And I can never remember which is the right one. So I know there's dyscalculia or dyscalcula. And then there's a third one, and one of them's wrong. And I'm sure I always say it the wrong way.
Well, the only way I can remember is saying dyscalculia. So
Yeah.
I'll like the count.
Yeah. Okay.
So it kind of makes sense in my head. But yeah, it was very rough because the teachers, they were getting notes, and I had all those comments on my report card saying that, Jen is very bright. She talks too much in class and she really needs help with math. Can you help her? And, no one could help me. It was very difficult. I always thought of numbers as something like, how could 7 has nothing to do with 8? I don't
Mm,
understand how that can add up to 15, right? Or what
mm,
does 15 have to do with 7 or 8? I don't get it.
yeah.
So, does it even? See?
So
See?
were your parents coming
Right?
down on you too, or was it just the school? Were they
It
frustrated because you weren't
They were
able to
very
get it?
frustrated. My dad, in fact, he went after me a couple of times and I had to find an escape route.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah. So it was rough. It was rough. And it was a couple of times and then he just gave up on trying to teach me math.
Mm.
And I was constantly told that, my mom would say, I need to take up basket weaving class. And,
Oh,
I just always had this ignorance is bliss kind of attitude. It's like, okay, yeah, they're making fun of me. And I would laugh it off. And, dad told me I wasn't the brightest bulb in the pack and all that stuff. So,
ouch.
yeah, it wasn't the most nurturing environment in that way, but they were
Mhm.
very loving in other ways.
Okay. They
So,
didn't
yeah.
understand though, right? I'm sure they thought, well, she's just not trying hard enough because she doesn't care.
Right. I would have frustrated the daylights out of myself as well.
Hmm.
So, and, even my son raising him, that was difficult because I could find 100 different ways. And I didn't know that this was something. I could find a bunch of different ways to organize him because I had figured out how to do that myself pre diagnosis and post diagnosis.
Mm.
But he needed to find his own way.
Yeah.
And now I understand that from listening to Ned Hollowell, which you've
Yeah.
introduced me to. So I needed to ask him how he needed to be taught. I had
Right.
no idea. And, turning back time now, start with my son. And I've been trying to work with him a little bit and it's rough. It's rough for parents. So I forgive them and I get it.
Absolutely. Okay. So then you're struggling in school. School is not the most pleasant place. And then your mom gets sick.
Yeah. Yeah. She got sick when I was 13. And that was, of course, rough. I started seeing it, there was blood in the toilet and things like that. And I came home from school and I had to bust the pane to the window to get the door open for a couple of days. And then I was asking her, "Did you eat today?" And, she hadn't. So I started staying home from school and I called an ambulance a couple of times thinking that they would take her and then realized they won't without her consent.
Oh, geez.
And
And
so,
she wouldn't go.
no, she wouldn't go. She didn't want to. She didn't trust doctors. She also had an accident that rendered her sterile. So they
Oh,
couldn't save her, her sterility, I guess, or her function,
right.
her functioning. So I think that was part of what made her
Yeah, that sounds
trust
like it.
doctors. Yeah. And
Okay.
she wanted just a litter of kids,
Mm,
fantastic. She really was.
yeah.
Yeah. So I started staying home when I was 13 and missing a lot of school. And, on top of being a bad student.
Uh huh.
So had to take care of her because I'd come home and have to bust a pane out the window to get the door open because she couldn't get up to open the door. They didn't trust me with the key. I wonder why. And
Were you the only child or did you have siblings?
I was an only child.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So then I would come home to a mess sometimes.
Yeah.
So the creativity came in with learning how to turn a patient and learning how to, help her drink water when she wasn't able to swallow and, and how to help her with the bathroom and everything. So it was,
And
it was
Jen,
rough.
up until then, she had been perfectly healthy.
Well, she was always thin and she couldn't lift her, what was it? Let me do this with my arm here. Her right arm to turn on the light switch. That's the only thing that I had noticed about her.
Mhm.
But other than that, she was pretty healthy and it was just a decline. I remember it was 13 when I started having to let myself in the house. And before that, I had noticed the blood in the bathroom. So yeah.
Oh, you poor thing. And so you are basically the only person there taking care of your mother?
Yeah, during the day. And my dad, like I said, he would drink at night and we got into a couple of fights about it. I was like, you got to do something. And I blamed him for a long time, thinking that he didn't push her, but you couldn't. I mean, I called an ambulance and then 14, I actually tried, it was 14, it was close to 15. I actually had a suicide attempt
Oh, Jen.
because my thinking was, I'm a minor and she has to go with me. Dad's not home.
Oh, Jen. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. So
So let me get this straight. You figured if I do this, then she's going to be so worried about me that she's going to have to go to the hospital too.
I just thought she would be forced to.
Wow.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Because I was 14 and a half. So,
Oh,
yeah. And when I got home, she passed away the day after. I was, institutionalized for a while.
you poor thing.
It was, well, but I'm okay.
Of course, yeah, now, but I mean, I'm just thinking of, well, I shouldn't say, of course, now. I shouldn't say that at all.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of this 14-year-old child, right? And I'm sure you think of that too, almost
Yeah.
like it's someone else, but, taking care of yourself kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, and I just want to say this because it's important, a lot of people think that, oh, it's just ADHD, it's not that serious. And that is not true, especially for ADHD women. So you need to know that women with ADHD have a greater propensity towards self-harm and suicide than the general population. In fact, there was a study in Canada that found that approximately 23% of ADHD women have attempted suicide. And this is compared to 8% of ADHD men, so 3 times higher likelihood, and 3% of women without ADHD, so almost 8 times higher likelihood for women without ADHD that they would have attempted suicide. Women who have the combined type of ADHD or the hyperactive impulsive subtypes are believed to be more at risk. And of course, it makes sense because we're impulsive. So, this idea that, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it can be a very big deal for women with ADHD. So I just want to make sure that I mention that. Oh, okay. Keep going. Oh my gosh, Jen.
So don't be, that's all right. I actually wrote Dr. Hallowell about this too. He was like, I have a lime-sized lump in my throat.
And he's
And
so
then
lovely. He will respond. He's just so lovely. Okay,
he
keep
wanted
going.
he wanted to do a Zoom meeting with me. I was like, oh,
Oh,
you silly guy. And yes, but I don't think so. But so I don't think that's gonna happen. So where was I? Yeah, dad decided after he needed to move to Florida that we needed to move to Florida. And he
mhm,
did want me to go with him. And I had the friend with social phobia that
mhm.
literally, Tracy, needed to be talked out of a closet for family get togethers.
Oh my
She would
gosh.
try to hide in the closet. And at that time, very bad habit. Don't anybody do this. We both smoked cigarettes.
Mhm.
And I'd have to bribe her to get a closet with, it's like, I can't give you a cigarette unless you're at least sitting with me in the room. That's a huge fire hazard, and I would make her laugh and you got to torch your house here, and
Oh.
she would come out and everything and we would sit and I would talk to her about how awesome her family is and you know and eventually she would come out, but she was attached, right? So I was
Right.
what I call her whoopee.
Oh.
So I couldn't leave. I couldn't. And
You are
he's,
such a lovely human being. You know that, right?
well, I hope so. I mean, I
Oh,
try,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
thank
From the
you.
time you were a little one.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, so she couldn't leave. And, dad, he tried to force the issue in a way.
Mhm.
And he said, okay, I'm going to pay the property taxes and for your heat because those are absolute necessities. He goes, but you're going to have to make it on your own. And I was like, okay.
So he
So,
was going to leave you in the house and you were supposed to pay the mortgage at
yeah,
15?
not the mortgage. No, 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 no. The mortgage was paid off.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it was just the property
You
taxes.
wanted to make sure you didn't lose the house.
Right. Exactly. So exactly. He tried. And he
Uh-huh.
thought for sure that I would end up going down there,
Yeah.
to Florida. And I mean, he bought a place with a dog run because we wanted to breed beagles and right next to a horse farm, which was my absolute, I was like over the top excited about it, but I couldn't leave my friend.
Mm.
So and it was the taxes, the property taxes that he paid and propane. And then I was supposed to pay the rest. What I ended up doing was getting sales jobs and customer service jobs. So, deli work and cashier
So were
but
you still in school at this point or no?
no,
Okay.
no.
So after
Yeah.
15, you never went back to school during that period.
I wanted to. And because they put me once they realized what happened, they
Hmm.
tried to put me in oh, you're going to love this story. They tried to put me in what is that, vocational school.
Yeah.
And they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Dog grooming or cosmetology." And they were like, "Okay." And then just before I started, they said, "All we have left is nursing aid."
Oh my.
And I
Well, we
was
know you're
like,
good at that.
"Well, yeah, yeah." So,
Drama.
yeah, I got the workbook, and this is the rebel in me. So you're not going to think I'm so sweet anymore. But I went to the school with a pack of cigarettes and that workbook and I slapped it on the table and I said, "I'm not doing this." And she was like, what are you talking? You can't have that in here. And then she started flipping through the book and seeing in the beginning of the book, it was a lot of what I had been doing and I filled it out angrily. And
There was no consideration, Jen, for what you had just gone through?
it was kind of kept in the dark. That was something that we were very, I wasn't supposed to be mentioning it, the whole deal. It was just, don't tell people that your mother was sick for a long time. Don't,
Oh my.
this, that, and the other thing. I couldn't tell people in school, tell teachers in school what was going on. It was very in the dark. There were people that could have stepped in, but it was, you know, what would have been the late 70s and just it wasn't like that. And
Wow.
people blamed me because here I am, ditzy and, and a bad student. And they're just thinking that I'm effing off.
Oh
You
my
know what I'm
gosh.
saying?
Yeah.
So, and I left it at that. There was nothing that I could really, or I felt that I could really do about it other than calling the ambulance for my mom a couple of times.
Yeah.
But once they did kind of realize it, they tried to put me in the vocational school. I did not want to do that. But the woman, when she started looking through and you talk about gold stars, she was like, "This is right." She's like, "You know how to turn a patient, you know how to do this, that." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." I was doing it with my mom. So she knew. And she said, "Go over there to the window with the cigarette." And she sat down with me and talked to me. And, of course, there was a lot of crying. And she said, "You could do this." And she said, "If you want to go into something else next year, go into something else." She says, "But you're already ahead of the class
Hmm.
and this might be your way." And
Was this the
I,
first time that someone had actually said, I think you'd be really good at anything?
my mom used to tell me that, well, I drew really well.
Mm.
In art class, I was next to this guy, Derek Dryman, and he's actually the artist who does SpongeBob. I was right next to him.
Yeah.
And he sat there and he would like look at my work. I'd look at his work. I was like, "This is awesome." And we had down the hallway school were the best female student, the best male student, because they did stuff like that. They weren't woke back then. And they had our art projects on the walls constantly. And it was just us, which I didn't think was fair. They should have picked other people. But yeah, my mom loved my artwork. She would tell my dad, "Look at what she drew." And he would dismiss it. He would sit there and look at the TV and he'd go, "That's nice." And I could see he wasn't looking. So, but that was what I was good at. And back then, and then when she said that, yeah, it was gold stars all over the place. And I was so excited. So I did
Okay.
want to stay
So
in school, but dad talked me out of it. And it was 2 days of arguing. And he just kept saying, "You're a beautiful woman. You'll marry a nice, rich man someday."
oh,
So that put me off rich men. I was like, that's not in my budget, Dad. It's not
That's
like,
not in my budget.
even as a kid, I was like, that's not the way you live life.
Yeah.
I understood that,
Yeah. Yeah. You needed to do
So,
something for yourself. You needed to live to your potential.
right. And
So,
she boosted me a little bit there, right?
mhm.
So, yeah.
So you did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
did it. I made a living, did I scrape by just the way you said. It was rough and, I would put money under the mattress for, certain bills and everything like that. And he came back a lot. Dad would come back you know, and visit and stuff. And then he met a woman but I was in the house by myself, 16, because he had finally made the final move
Right.
at 16 until I was married. And as a matter of fact, until I was 43, I moved
Wow.
to Virginia.
Wow. So you lived in the home you grew up in until you were 43?
Yeah. Yeah. And I started paying the taxes after I divorced my ex.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Okay. So
And
tell us the story then of your son being diagnosed.
okay. So, all right. So he came home with that paper and I'm sitting there and I'm checking off, like it was a fill in the dots. Like, is this, what do you call that? Is this bad or is it really bad? Or is it, you know what I'm saying? It was a three
Yeah.
different rating. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's
The
pretty bad. That's
behavior
pretty bad.
ratings. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Uh-huh.
I'm realizing, wow, that's me too. Oh my goodness. Hmm.
But you
And I'm
had
like,
been diagnosed before, right? Had you forgotten?
no, I wasn't diagnosed
Oh,
yet.
you had not been. I
No,
don't
I
know
was
why.
diagnosed. Yeah, at 34, I was
You know
diagnosed.
what? I'm mixing you up with my guest from yesterday. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. You have voices here. It's fine.
Okay, so had you thought all along before you were diagnosed or before your son was diagnosed and you're sitting there filling out these behavior rating scales, had you thought, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. I don't think like normal people.
I thought I was weird. I mean, who grabs their friend and puts their arm around them and starts singing show tunes, Grease. They're walking through the school hallways, right? Who does that?
Yeah.
Jen. And joined in because how could you not?
Yeah.
So I knew I was weird. I knew I was weird. And I wondered how everybody got through things. Like, how do you sleep at night? I'm busy drawing and I'm busy writing poetry and, learning the lyrics to songs so I can sing them really badly. It was just, or I'm dancing in my room. So that I guess was the hyperactivity. But yeah, I knew I was different. I knew I was unique. And, people thought I was funny
Mhm.
growing up. And I wondered how people retained what the teacher just said. Like sometimes I'd shoot my hand up in class and then I completely forget what the teacher just asked.
Yeah.
And I'm like searching the room for cues. And I'm like, she was writing on the board, okay, that was the question. And it was like, no, that was the question before, and I'm like, I had the answer. I swear I had the answer. One of my teachers told me once that it's so wonderful to see you keep trying because a lot of the time I'd have the answer just a little bit off. It would be
Yeah.
just a little bit off because it was kind of my interpretation
Yeah.
of what she said because I seemed to learn relationally.
Yeah.
I would give an example of my life as it relates to the answer, and the teacher would be like, huh? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was weird.
Well, and you were probably thinking, even more deeply into it, right? Like third, fourth level. You weren't just at the topical level. You had already applied it to all kinds of things that relevant to you.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. And it was still I struggled in school because I needed to learn a different way.
Yes.
It's a relational thing. I need to learn things as it relates to me.
Yeah. So tell me about, so you're filling out these behavior rating scales with your son. I think that's the one. There's like three different things they have you fill out. And I always forget what the actual name is of the one that we fill out, like as a patient. You're helping him fill this out or you're watching him fill this out. You're reading the questions. And do you remember the questions that you're looking at them and thinking, oh my gosh, I think I might have this too?
Not really. All I know is what started happening is, it was organizational questions. It was struggles to remember things. Often seems like they're not listening. Yeah, I do remember the questions, but and but they are listening. They answer after they say what. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
was that type of a thing, and it was very, back then it was very, I guess, basic is the way I would put it. Right? It wasn't what we're learning today about what is that TPM that Dr. Hallowell and Rady were talking
Yeah.
about,
That's
a
positive
the
network.
demon and the angel, and
Yeah.
it's just it was very basic what they did, and I was putting little pencil marks next to the ones that I found that I had. So I went to my general practitioner, and by the way, he had, the severe or to middling, as I put it, about 8 of the symptoms, and I had 9. And I
Mm,
kinda was like, maybe for the 10th. And
yeah.
when you went over these 30 questions that you had, I had all of them,
Yeah.
every single one of them. And Dr. Rady went over, there was 100 of them, and I had 75.
Wow.
So, yeah, I got it bad or good. It's actually a gift.
Yeah.
So I went to my doctor and I said, Travis was just diagnosed with ADHD, and I think I might have it. He goes, I was waiting for you to say something. So I loved my doctor. He was amazing. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah. He goes, I'm not the person that you're going to be talking to about this. He goes, but it's a pleasure to send you there. And what I want to do is give you a one, just because he had, what was it, Concerta in the office,
Hmm.
4 cases like that. And he says, just call me the next day and let me know how this affected you. And he said, and that's a good indication. This is like a test, right? Back then, this is a good indication of whether or not you have it. If you feel like it's made a big difference.
Which, yeah, they don't say that today.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. It was nothing. My whole
Hmm.
diagnosis story is nothing like what I hear other people. And I'm like, wow,
Right.
it's amazing how far we've come.
Because
But
a lot of doctors would, had said during that time that, oh, because the ADHD medication didn't work for you, that means you don't have ADHD, which,
oh,
we know that at least 20% of us medication doesn't work.
it's a horrible fact that so many people aren't, diagnosed, and that
Hmm.
women get diagnosed with other things because of course we're hormonal and hysterical, and it's just
Right.
it's crazy,
Medical misogyny at its best.
Yeah, yeah. And there's women that aren't as educated with it as well.
Of
So
course.
it's something you have to look into because it's such a thing that masks. With us masking, how are we supposed to know? But anyway, so doctor, he sent me to a psychologist. And of course, I got lost the first day. It's like round the corner from my house. I got lost and I got charged for that. He reimbursed me in the end, though, once he sat down with me. And I was in the office with this doctor. Oh, and the pills work, by the way. I took the pill. I called the doctor crying the next day. It was like, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. I was like, I can't believe it. He goes, yeah, let me make you the appointment. So I got the referral with, I guess it's a psychiatrist, right?
For the
That
medication. Yeah.
yes, that can actually, write
Well,
the
any
script.
medical doctor, but probably in this case, it would have been a psychiatrist.
Right. And he was an ADHD specialist. So
Mhm.
I filled out the intake form, and he takes the intake form and he goes, yeah, you have it. And he just like steepled his fingers in front of him. He goes, we can keep talking, but you have it. And I was like, well, he's just looking at all the scratch outs and the little notes and the little arrows that I have. This belongs up here. This is over here. And oh my goodness, vast space. And he just said, you have it. Then I said, well, why do you have pens in the waiting room and not pencils? I was like, you're testing people for ADHD. I don't understand this. And he's like, sense of humor. So he did talk to me for a while, and he said, yeah, you definitely have it. I'll get you a script. And so that was my diagnosis story.
And
Yeah.
so again, it was the mommy factor, right? Your son was diagnosed, and then it was like, oh, maybe I have it too.
Right. Right. So the heritability thing is in there.
How
Definitely.
many kids? Oh, you have 3 kids, and just one child has ADHD or?
I'm not sure at this point. For some, I was it Karen Briard? I forget what her name was. Kristen Briard Goldsmith, right? Yeah, because I have her CBT
Oh,
workbook.
Kristen Baird.
Baird, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Maybe I
Yeah,
have
the
a little dyslexia. I
CBT
don't know.
therapist and ADHD. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going through that workbook now. I love it.
It's a great book.
Oh, she's book is amazing. Yeah. So she had said, what did she say that and it was a rhyme and I loved it and I forget what it was, but she said that, like we see it in people, you know, if you are it, you see it, something like that. And I
We
kind of
tend to
see it.
attract, right? Well, I think we tend to attract other people with ADHD because, of course, they see themselves in us and vice versa. But
Yes,
you start to notice what people with ADHD, like what their behaviors are.
exactly. Yeah, especially when you're obsessing with it, and then I have to sit there and learn when to shut my mouth. But because I'm like, drive. And it's like, no, don't, not everybody's open to that. But my kids, as for my kids, I kind of see it a little bit in my daughter, but she had to deal with now this. I feel I adore her. We live within 2 minutes of each other. I kind of see it a little bit, but I'm not sure. And she's fine though, but she had to deal with me and her brother,
Yeah.
right? Then my other son, it seems like he might as well, but no one's been diagnosed. And the more I'm learning about it, the more I'd like to encourage them just to get tested. So it's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if they don't want to, it's not going to happen. So maybe if they do have ADHD, their symptoms are not, at the stage that they feel like they need help.
Yes. Yeah. I would, absolutely. That's
Or I should
something
say
that,
at the level.
right, right, right. Yeah. It's
So,
just hard.
so in your email, you said, I see the pre-diagnoses workarounds I figured out on my own that helped me to survive while raising myself from the age of 13. What did you mean by that?
Well, Brene Brown is part of this too. All my heroes, all my heroes. Brene Brown did that talk that's so infamous now and on Netflix. And she
Was
talked
it her
about
TED Talk
gratitude.
or?
Yeah, it was I think it was a TED Talk on Netflix or a Netflix special. I'm not sure, but I've seen both.
She's done.
But the
Yeah,
one
you're
that
right. Okay. I know what you're talking about now.
yeah, the one that got me was the one on Netflix. That's the first one that I saw. And then
Mhm.
I went down the Brene Brown rabbit hole, which is a beautiful place. But gratitude is the reason. I really feel like that, my intuition, because when I was alone, I really needed to learn who I could trust and who I couldn't. And I wasn't perfect, but I've gotten better with age. And I really learned. And, after my divorce, I found a phenomenal guy who unfortunately passed away in October. But he
Sorry.
was, yeah, cancer again. And it was 9 months struggling with that with him. But
You have had a lot, haven't you, Jen?
yeah, yeah, it's been a rough road. It's been a rough road. But again, the gratitude.
I love it.
um,
Oh, despite all of this, you're here talking about gratitude because it works, huh?
oh my goodness, it's a muscle. You said it. It's a muscle you need to flex all the time. You need to. I remember one time I was talking to a kid in a job that I had. It was New Jersey Pets. It was an absolute phenomenal place to work. And my manager was like, talk to the kids all the time because I can talk them through things. And she was in an argument with her boyfriend. And I was like, you need to put your phone out in the car. You know what drives guys crazy? If you don't answer them. And and I was like, you're gonna work and we're gonna have fun. And despite all this stuff, and I was like, and you stop answering him, you're gonna get your I'm sorry's. And I talked to her about gratitude and I didn't realize it then. I was like, just look at little things that you could be thankful for because she was sad. And I found a stick of gum. I was like, look, a piece of gum. I was like, my breath is like bad right now. And I was like, I found a piece of gum. I was like, isn't this awesome? And she just looked at me like, oh my God. And I'm like, woohoo. And She's just like, okay. And she's gradually came out of it. I would tell the kids to smile, look in the mirror and just smile, even if you're faking it. Because that sends, heard somewhere that it sends like endorphins into your brain if you're smiling and if you're looking at somebody smiling. So if you don't see anybody smiling, you can come to me or look at yourself in the mirror. And they would come out and they'd be like, that's so weird. I feel better. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So these were kind of the things that I learned. And even though, I mean, I've been through some rough stuff, I just had to learn, to continuously practice active gratitude. And now I meditate on gratitude, and it's just extremely important. Integrity as well. I've been in sales all of my life, and I've sold things that, it was like, whatever. And sometimes I didn't feel like companies were being integral. And so now I'm at a job where I am working to make sure that senior citizens are getting the best care. So I'll be starting that job on Monday. I would not lower my standard for that, for the jobs that I was applying for. And it was scary, but I have some savings. So, because I had 1099 jobs for a long time. So I didn't have unemployment. So I was
Yeah.
drawing from my savings whenever I was unemployed. So it was rough. And ultimately, in the end, I want to end up being an ADHD coach.
Well, you know what? You should be an ADHD coach because our best purposes give meaning to our past. And I'm sure there are things now that you see because of your experiences that other people can't see. And there are people that you can relate to because of your experiences, and they can relate to you better than anybody else. Again, because of the things that you have been through. So I'm curious why you're always the hardest worker at any job that allows you the freedom to create a process. Why do you think that is?
Okay, I love that. When I create a process that's my own, I did this with trucking and during the trucking
Wait,
strikes.
wait. With trucking? Is that what you just said?
With trucking, yeah, with I was a recruiter. We had started off as marketing for different vertical, and we ended up completely taking over that vertical within a couple of months, myself and another girl and two other ladies. And myself and the other girl were the new ones, and the two other ladies were there. And we ended up, where they just needed to maintain that business. We needed to find another vertical to go into, and we went into trucking. And this was just before COVID. So there was the trucking strikes and everything like that. And I had the highest hire rate, and that was getting the trust. And what ended up happening though before that was we had been partnered with a recruiter. We were just setting appointments for this recruiting company, for the recruiters. And they weren't getting us drivers. So I
Mhm.
started trying it just for the heck of it. And I kind of learned why. And we started digging into their process because they wanted to just gut the entire company and get new recruiters and just get rid of their partner. And I was like, no, there's people there. This guy has a baby. This guy has. So I was like, maybe we can help them. And one of the things was they were working on phones in anywhere. He's like, yeah, I give them the freedom to work from anywhere. And I'm like, well, I needed like 3 screens. I was like, I said, so they might need at least a computer where
Yeah.
they can split their screen. And I said, I'm noticing that in your Slack, that was their communication, that they're asking questions and they don't have answers. And they're referring to the carrier as, does anybody know if, and then they would use the carrier name and not the individual's name. And I knew what their names were. I was like, do they have their numbers? Can they ask them these questions? Because you can't just guess or tell the driver what they want to hear.
Right.
So I created a whole new process, changed the name of, recruiter to driver advocate. And I put things, or I had them put things into the contracts that the carriers were responsible as well for their success. So I became a client success manager. I was an onboard person who, onboarded carriers, took down all the information so that we could relay that to the recruiters. And then I was a recruiter. That got overwhelming. So they actually
So,
had
what you
meetings.
came in there, though, the other part might have been overwhelming, but you came in there to do, which it sounds like you're brilliant at, is to look at the big picture, make the
Yeah,
connections, and make things better. But
right.
then once you make it better, do you have the sense that, okay, my job's done. I need to go on to the next project where I can make something better?
I didn't with that because
Hmm.
I really got attached to good carriers and good drivers. I love
Ah.
truck drivers.
So, was
They
it the
were
relationships then that kept you in the connection?
Oh, it was the connection. Yeah, it kept me
Mhm.
in a lot, but unfortunately, they didn't have the bandwidth at the company to, continue to do that.
Mhm.
So, I just got to the point where I was like, I'm out and I quit. I still love those people, but I quit and went to another company.
Yeah.
So, and there I did not have the freedom. So then when I was with Sam Ivy, I had the freedom and it was working. It was working, but unfortunately they couldn't continue with the sales team. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
it's all right. Now I'm going to be helping seniors.
Yeah. Okay. So you also said in your email that you found success through your innate ability to listen around corners and through walls, to read people and their needs and care enough to help. What do you
Right.
mean? Listen around corners through walls?
Well, one of the things that I had to do, this is just going back to that example, was train, you know, out my recruiters to listen to the driver because we had one point like 30 different carriers. And we had a spreadsheet saying, that this carrier offers healthcare. This is over the road. They're going to be on the road for 3 weeks at a time. And then this one's local and this one's this, that, and the other thing. So the questions that you had to ask, was basically, where are you located? And then you would see if there's any local carriers for them, but you had to listen to what they were saying. If they just said that they had a baby, you're going to want to get them a local carrier.
Yeah.
And if they say that they just had a baby and they're looking at an over the road carrier and all they're seeing is a cents per mile, you know, you say, look, they're going to be needing drivers in the future, but don't you think you're going to want to be home? And it was that kind of caring that really, resonated with the drivers because I was listening to them and I was trying to do the best for them. And I also didn't want the carrier to lose that driver because they come to the realization, oh, this is too much. And wow, now that the baby's here, it's kind of cute. I think I want to stay home with it, you
Hmm.
know? So it was things like that. And just hearing a person, understanding what they're saying and knowing that there's more to it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, what you're saying is that you almost know what oftentimes isn't spoken. And that
Yeah.
is what you include in your determination of what you're going to do next.
Right. Right. And even over the phone, because I did phone sales my whole life, uh, I can hear where a person is at. You know what I'm saying? And I feel them. There's a lot of empathy that comes with this gift, as Dr. Hallowell calls it. And I get it. I get it. And they're angry. If somebody's angry at another carrier, and you listen to why, and oh, they told me that they would have APUs. That's their heat and their air conditioning. So if they're driving and they get caught in a snowstorm and you never know when that's going to happen and they can't pull over, they need to have the heat and that's an APU and they told me they'd have that and they didn't have that and I'd feel for them. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you get in trouble with that? What happens? And a lot of sales, people think you have to get on the phone and get off quick. It's a numbers game. But with that, we had to adapt. You need to hear these guys out, especially when you have drivers strikes going on.
Yeah.
So, these guys and they were so necessary. Some of them were a little bit, their heads were a little bit inflated. And you kind of had to go with that. It's like if I wasn't driving a truck, you wouldn't have food. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, honey. I don't, I just keep my mouth shut and I'm like, well, yeah, you guys are super valuable, but if you want a job, I need to know what you need. So yeah, it's a lot of listening and caring.
Well, and it sounds like with the employer too, is what you're saying, that you're listening to what it is that they're saying, but also looking to see what they actually need. And in
Yeah.
that way, you don't climb ladders, but you create your own rungs, right? You create the job that they don't even know that they need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that happened with another company. They wanted me to go on the road and do sales. And I'm terrified of flying, Tracy. I'm just terrified of it. And so
It's
they
more
wanted me to
dangerous to
go.
drive in your car.
I know, I know. Statistically, it's unreasonable, but
I
my
was still
brain is
terrified, damn it.
right. Yes, exactly, exactly. And it was done it once on my own, and it was very stressful. That's a long story, but anyway, I would love to do it on vacation when there's no pressure to be anywhere. You know what I'm saying? That would be something that I would love to do. But so wasn't just that. I had noticed in meetings that they were saying that there's a 30% subscription rate drop off, like a cancellation.
Hmm.
And this particular company, it was for schools. And I told Bears when he interviewed me, I was like, I don't want to do sales. I think we need retention. And so that started, he was like, well, I've been thinking about that, but how do you think we ought to get it started? And I said, well, you have something on the, website saying that whether or not they're using it or not. So you can gauge, which ones are not using it. I said, I can call them and find out why, and then pass them off to the department that they need to talk to fix the issue before they cancel, because it was such a class link, by the way, it was such a phenomenal product, such a phenomenal product. It's a single sign on for kids, right? So yeah, single sign on. It's like I used to say this, one password rules them all. And they would have everything right in front of them on one desktop.
Hmm.
So boy, does that work for ADHD or anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you could put all of your class things, all of your applications that you need, all of your notes, everything in one folder and go. I'm sure it's improved since then. Absolutely phenomenal. And, it ended up snowballing into a huge department for retention. And it couldn't have happened to a better company, a better person. I love Bears and Susan, his wife. It was a really, it worked. So they ended up sending people out to schools so that they could have in-person classes, and it increased employees there. We had to hire a bunch of people to help teach the teachers how to learn. I would say to the directors, I was like, when you get on, this was like Zoom calls, when you get on with Lindsay, I want you to be on with your most, tech resistant teacher that you have, so they can hear Lindsay out and they can show her how to use it, or him,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
see how they feel about it afterwards. And I'm like, because I'm not going to use the word because it's not politically correct, but I would say text something else at the end of it. And and I would say, and I know how to use this and I love it and I use it every day for work. So they would take that meeting even though they were ready to cut that app,
Yeah.
and it helped. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing. It's like creating your own rungs. It's like the ER, we're really good with, ER and triage.
Yeah.
As with ADHD, that's one of our things. That was I can see a big picture and see need.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Jen, what do you think the key to living with successfully with ADHD is?
Ugh, it's a lot. Learning about it and doing your own thing individually, figuring out what works for you. I know that right now my entire trying to get my house organized to where I want it, right? Like I have chargers every spot in the house, and just living with gratitude and finding ways that work for you, that until you get it right. And that's one of the main things. Meditation is huge for me. I have to stop, and Dr. Hollowell said this in one of his books, that meditation doesn't have to be for 10, 15 minutes. You
No.
can just breathe
Yep.
into your belly, that, I think they call it box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. I could do that 3 or 4 times and it kind of resets my mind. But it's a muscle that I've been working. Meditation and gratitude are both muscles. You have to think of it that way. You work them. And like you say, exercise. I'm just starting Spark now, Tracy. I'm so excited. I have some required listening because I listen to everything for work. So I'm going to be getting back to it. But yes, exercise, I can't even express when I'm exercising, hasn't even made a difference in my body yet. And I feel better. It's the endorphins, it's everything that really feeds your brain, you know? And it's just the Alexa alarms works, setting alarms. I don't have an Alexa in this room, so I can, but I'm still whispering because she makes me nervous.
I know. You're going to turn mine on. Alexa.
Exactly.
Well, Jen, you are just a delight. Your optimism, your gratitude, your kindness, you're an inspiration for anyone. And you're so bright, you're so industrious, you're such a problem solver that any company is lucky to have you, truly.
Oh.
So I am just so grateful that you came and talked to us.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for you, everything that you do. I know everyone says this to you, but it really, the vitamin connect, all of it. It's just, I love your voice. And when I hear it, it brings me up and makes me feel like I'm capable. I appreciate you, Tracy. Thank you.
Well, you are beyond capable, Jen. So if someone is listening and they want to reach out to you, what would be the best? Well, first of all, can they? And then if they can, where can they do it? Or how can they do it?
I would love that. What I'm going to be trying to do is getting a blog going so that I can actually, monetize a little bit of the knowledge as I'm going along to teach people. And, I'll have links in there eventually. And if they could follow me on that, that would be absolutely wonderful. Once it's up, I can let them know. But until then, I believe I sent Grace some links to my Facebook page. They are welcome to message me and just say, hey, let me know when it's up. I'll be there to, just do whatever they need to do with the blog to help support my journey to become an ADHD coach.
Oh.
Right now, I don't have the money.
You deserve to be an ADHD coach. I honestly think you could help so many people because, again, you've got this intimate knowledge. And there are people who they won't believe me, but they'll absolutely believe you because your experience, it's all about our experiences, right? So you're going to have so much more credibility than I ever would. And
oh, no, you.
No, absolutely 100%. I mean, you have been through a lot of things and yet you are still so cheerful and so optimistic. And you realize that it's part of your story, right? It makes you who you are. And that is such a gift.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you've taught me that. I really appreciate that.
Okay, so wait, if they want to go to Facebook, where do they go? Like, how do they find you on Facebook?
It's Jennifer Kohms. They can find me at Jen Kohms. Jen Kohms.
Okay, so it's JenKohms.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. And I sent a link to Grace if you wanted to put it in your show notes.
Well, I have a link here that says JKohms68. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, that's my email. It could be the Facebook link. I'll see. You know what I'll do? I'll send it to your email that you were so gracious to actually answer. Took me 2 days to absorb that, but I can send it to you.
I want to find. Hold on one second. So, Nico, cut all this out of us talking here, but because I want to find her, I want to find the link so that they can go directly to it. So, I'm going to look for Jen Kohms. I'm just worried that there's like going to be a million of them and people won't. Is it Canine Advocate at Sam Ivy? Is that it? I'm going to add you as a friend.
Yeah, I got to change that, but that's what. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you again. So if people want to find you, where can they go? And then you're going to say, go to Jen, spell it, Jen Kohms on Facebook, because there's
Okay,
really only one Jane Kohms that I'm seeing here. So let's start over, Jen. So
sure.
Jen, if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Well, you can message me on Facebook, and the name is Jen, Jen, and the last name is K as in kangaroo, O as in otter, H as in horse, M as in monkey, S as in snake.
Wonderful. So
Jen Kohms.
message you at Jen Kohms on Facebook.
That's right. Yes.
Jen, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. I was absolutely thrilled to be talking to you. I appreciate you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be talking to you too. So have a wonderful day. And that is what I have for you for this week. If you like this episode with Jen, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. As always, you're listening to ADHD for Smartass Women. Come join me over at tracyotsuka.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week. You've been listening to the ADHD for Smartass Women podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Otsuka, and we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Not coincidentally, ADHD for Smartass Women, it's also the name of our free Facebook group. We're a totally smartass community of successful, ambitious women who share our ADHD wins, questions, and workarounds. Join us at tracyotsuka.com, where you can also find more information on our Your ADHD Brain is A-OK system. I spy a happier life for us, and I'll see you again next week.